Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to try to be brief in this video. I just have about 4 points to go over really quickly. So let's start with the first point. I want to talk about the survey. It looked like the survey from the 15 of you that answered was in the affirmative, so I'm going to go ahead and make that syllabus change. I will post a new syllabus this weekend so that you have clarification on the revision and the changes. So I'll have the old one as well as the new one posted so you can kind of compare the differences. So in terms of that, what does that mean? It means that this week you're going to do whole school approaches is the chapter discussion, and then you're also going to do the content specific classroom management strategy, and I'll talk about that in point 4 a little bit more. So you'll do those 2 assignments this upcoming week. The following week you will do, this is where the change came in, you will do 2 chapters at once and just have 1 discussion. It's worth double the points so that we can keep the points the same. And then after that, you have no more discussion boards. So you got 2 more weeks of discussion boards, and then you will do your teacher interview the week after that. So you have all week to just focus on that assignment without any other distractions from this class. And then after that, you'll just read the chapters on classroom management plan, and you'll make your classroom management plan, and the semester is over. So we're getting close. We're almost there. It's kind of exciting. In terms of grading, you should, at the end of this week, have in total 195 points if you have turned everything in and have done it well. If there are discrepancies there, if you feel like you turned things in but you weren't getting points and there wasn't explanations or whatever that case may be, as always, contact me and we'll make sure we get that taken care of. I don't want there to be any discrepancy there. I want you to know how well you're doing on a weekly basis, and that way you're earning the grade you're working hard for. So those are kind of my administrative issues. So point 2, let's talk about the discussion this week. A lot of the questions that kind of were highlighted in your theme had to do with family engagement, which I thought was kind of interesting. So you were talking about community approaches and how can we use these community approaches when a lot of them are talking about, especially with like CPD, family engagement. I just want to briefly read standard 4 of the evaluative framework for those of you that are going to teach in CCSD. They expect that you will be able to meet these indicators. So I will briefly go over them. Indicator 1, in summary, says that you should be able to facilitate what they say is 2-way communication with parents and guardians, discussing with them, tools and grades and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so indicator 2, the teacher, it says, values, respects, welcomes, and encourages students and families of all diverse cultural backgrounds to become active members of the school and views them as valuable assets to student learning. And then indicator 3, the teacher informs and connects families and students to opportunities and services according to student needs. So, why do I share this? Because you're going to be evaluated on it. The community approaches begs the question that we should get families more involved, and a lot of you ask the question, how do we do that? And so I'm going to say, from a teacher standpoint, I have no idea. It's a challenge, and a lot of you had asked that question, well, what about families that work? How do we get people involved? I think the goal is to just, in this case, start brainstorming some strategies and coming up with some ideas. So number 1, if your students are struggling, parents should definitely be the first option. So you're hitting indicator 1, you're focusing on that community approach and trying to bring parents in. Indicator 2, you're encouraging students and families to get involved in the school through various activities and clubs and organizations. And by doing that, you're helping the family be a part of it. I've come up with ideas where I've had, different parents come in and talk about their jobs, and I've had parents come in to assist me with the classroom if they wanted to. I mean, there's just different things you can do. And so I think the theme of that discussion was interesting. You all seem to lend yourself to the question of how do we get families involved and use an approach like this? So I just thought that was an interesting question. I just wanted to touch on that and connect that to the NEPF, which is this new framework we're all being evaluated on, and to be considering some of the answers to the questions. And I wish I could be a better instructor in that way and say, hey, I have all the answers, and I unfortunately I don't. I think we're all struggling with some of those same questions, but I think it's a good question to ask. And so it's good for us to be reflective, me as well, on how we can go about involving parents more and getting parents more involved in students' education. So I apologize. I know that kind of sounds vague and ambiguous and maybe a little bit anticlimactic, but it's the truth. Involving parents is a good thing. Doing it in application and implementation is a whole other thing, and it maybe is a little bit more challenging. So I may do, just for sake of wanting to brush up on my own knowledge, do a little research this week. And then in next week's video, maybe I'll post a few strategies in terms of those questions that were asked. So I don't want to leave you hanging for sure. So excellent job on those questions. So point number 3, the observation. A lot of you said, well, I don't feel like there's much to critique, and that's fine too. I wanted to share this video for that intention. It is a good video. It's a good teacher. Some of you maybe disagreed and you had your opinions as to why and you backed them up, and that's fine too. But for the most part, this was a pretty effective classroom. What I wanted you to do with this is really understand, why is it an effective classroom? You're going to see a lot as you go throughout your career, principals and administration and different teams sharing negative examples of what you shouldn't do, and we all learn from negative examples, and that's good, and we've done that in this class. However, I think it's also beneficial to say, well, what does a good teacher look like and good instruction look like, so we can model ourselves after good practices as well. And so with this last observation, that was kind of my goal, is to throw a more positive one in there and get you to evaluate and critique as to why it is positive, and a lot of you did that, so excellent job. So my 4th point, coming up this week. So this week you are going to do whole school approaches. It's the last theory in terms of classroom management approaches. And then next week we'll dive into how we approach students with special needs, as well as students with diverse needs, which is also a big topic right now in the Clark County School District, where we have an influx of more English language learners. So that'll be a good chapter, or a couple of chapters to tackle. But you're going to tackle basically now how, again, back to the community approach, how can we as a school develop a kind of a school-wide approach to classroom management? So you're going to tackle those ideas, and then you'll do your final classroom management strategy. Again, this was an assignment we were split on. So again, I hope that this is something that is going to help you have a little bit of practicality in terms of classroom management. So be thinking about your instruction. So let me give you an example. I teach English. This is now not a general classroom management strategy, meaning like the last time, you can do this classroom management strategy that you shared in the last one we did, can really be applied to any classroom. Now you want to be thinking specifically about a classroom management strategy that applies to your specific content area. So back to my example. I'm an English teacher. I use Socratic Seminar as a strategy very often for instruction. However, there is some management issues with how to deal with a Socratic Seminar and how to go about grading it, going about making sure all students are participating, making sure that students are not goofing off. I mean, these are all things that come up with a Socratic Seminar. But you don't see a Socratic Seminar in a science classroom per se. At least I have yet to see that. You may see it a lot in a history classroom. That's fine too. You may not see a Socratic Seminar in a math classroom. So this is one of those not a general classroom management strategy. It's more of the content specific. I want you to think about your instruction and how you would go about giving me a strategy to manage a certain aspect of your content. So how, for example, in my case, how would I manage a Socratic Seminar in terms of grading, in terms of behavior, in terms of instruction? Think about the 4 purposes again, right? So you talk about, we want to make sure that classroom management minimizes behavior, creates positivity, has flow, connects with instruction, those types of things. So be thinking again about those, and I may post that in your discussion about the 4 focuses of classroom management so that you can have that as a focus in your discussion. But again, this week now you're going into very content-specific strategies of how you're going to teach your content and manage within your content. And I'm going to do something a little bit different too this week in the discussion thread. I'm kind of lending this off the midterm survey that I got. A lot of you said it would be nice to just interact with maybe 1 or 2 people and really go more in depth. So instead of discussing with everybody this week, I only want you discussing with your content area counterparts. And I will also discuss those groups and who should be in those groups in the discussion thread. So if you're history, you should be talking history and talking with history people and getting insights from them. If you're English, same thing. If you're science, same thing. And then if there are kind of the odds and ends, I may throw you in the odds and ends group. So I think it'll work out pretty well. So that is this week. Reading that chapter, having that discussion, and doing your final classroom management strategy and having that discussion. As always, if there are any concerns or problems, please address them with me. I think I've covered everything, and I will look forward to seeing what you come up with this week in terms of a strategy, and as well as finishing up the theories in terms of how we can approach classroom management from the various philosophies and theories that we've read. So Enjoy your week, and I will talk to you next week.